welcome to this episode of Authentic Achievements, where I'm delighted to be joined by my good friend, Pete Lowe. Pete, welcome.
Hello, Kim. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm so looking forward to this conversation. But before we get stuck in, let me just introduce you more formally to people who might not know you yet. So Pete Lowe is a transformative figure in football development, renowned for his tenure at Manchester City Football Club, with 39 graduates reaching first team football and 23 becoming international players. Pete's leadership yielded numerous titles and a remarkable £60 million return on investment. Beyond the pitch, Pete translates his sporting success into winning business strategies, inspiring teams with honesty and directness. His anecdotes from the Premier League resonate, often offering practical insights from unlocking organisational potential. Pete Lowe's proven methodologies elevate teams and forge a path to unparalleled success. And you've had some amazing stories over your journey, which started as a teacher, didn't it, before you moved into the Premier? So can you tell us a little bit about your journey so far, please?
Oh, the journey, Kim. The journey is a long one. Long one and interesting one. Yeah, I did 14 years as a teacher.
Wow.
And I'm really pleased I did. I enjoyed teaching. But then a new challenge came along, and that was professional football. And because I'm the sort of person that loves a challenge, I was never going to turn it down, no matter what. So you go from a world of security into a world of complete insecurity, which didn't bother me. That was part of the challenge at the end of the day. And from that point onwards, I forged a career, if you like. I can't lie that I've been very lucky along the way. You know, I met some good people who were very helpful, and I met some great people that I eventually worked with properly at Manchester City. We were a heck of a team, to say the least. So it's been a long journey. So that was 14 years as a teacher and about 25 in football, part-time and full-time. So whilst I was a teacher, I moved into football on a part-time basis. Then that eventually became full-time, Kim.
Wow. So I bet you've had some amazing experiences, particularly in helping people with their mindset and getting them to be like you, to like take on the challenge and not let it set you back. So what would you say has been the thing you're proudest of so far?
Oh, that's a really good question. That if I'm honest, I always come back to this, and it was adapting to a change, to moving from an organisation or from work where you were educating people to a place where you had to start educating in a different way, including educating yourself as well, because it was a change of environment. And you used the word mindset there. So that was the first thing that hit me, Kim, was that unless you started to understand that failure is something that is going to happen, so you have to accept that, okay, but never be accepting of it. And what I mean by that is that it happens, but once it's happened, you've been given a gift. And the gift is knowing how to learn to use it. So it's no longer an adversity, it's a challenge. And there is a difference between the two, in my opinion. So I think the thing I would say in reflecting the answer to that is that it was really just adapting to understanding what high performance meant and actually how to produce it.
Yeah, I love that. And it's all in that reframe, isn't it? Because, you know, it's not the mistake that defines us, it's what we do with the mistake and the lesson that we take from it, and how we, you know, how we take that and evolve it so that we improve. I can't remember whose quote it was, but somebody was saying that actually, you know, professionals don't practice until they get it right. They practice till they can't get it wrong. And they just keep that you can never ever be perfect, in which case you just keep practicing, you just keep honing that skill. So what advice would you give to people when they're feeling stuck, when they're in that place where they're like, it feels like every time I try and do this it fails? What can I do differently to see the lesson in here rather than just feel the failure?
Okay, so the really important word, there's one word that you used in that that question, and that is differently. How do I do it differently? Because it's a bit like when you were saying to, permit me to say this, when you were speaking to a group of players where you actually might have lost a game, okay, and the game that you've lost, you've been beaten by a much better team on the day, and yet your players have played terrifically. Okay, they played really, really well according to how you wanted them to play. The next time you play that opposition, you might choose to do it differently. That's just the point. So different makes reference not just to something that's going poorly, if you like, but somewhere along the line where we have to actually change tack to do something in a different way because we need different results in the way of putting something. That's a mindset issue. But my absolute advice goes like this. You have to stick at it. That's the first thing. Is it because it comes back to the previous thing that I said about failure. Failure is a gift. When you're prepared to see what it is, it's a gift. You've been given an opportunity to do it again. Simple as that. And you might fail again. That's fine, by the way. All you're doing all the time throughout of this is building adversity, this ability to manage adversity, because that's a tough gig, by the way. And you have to learn to do that over a period of time. One of the key things that I did, though, Kim, was this. I always made sure I had somebody to speak to. I made sure that I had somebody who was a trusted soul, somebody that I could reach out with my soul to their soul. I believe in that, by the way.
Yeah.
We don't speak enough from the soul. We speak sometimes in cold, driven, hard facts of black and white numbers and theories from a book, and somebody said this and somebody said that. None of it means anything unless you believe in it.
Yeah.
And that has to come from your soul. So I found a trusted person. I stuck with that person, believed in that person, and I know that person believed in me. That person was somebody that originally wasn't a friend, by the way, but who became one. But I also knew that that person would tell me the truth no matter what, even if I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And I stuck with that. But the first bit is you can't give up, because giving up is too damn easy.
Yeah. I love that, and it's so important that you find somebody, isn't it, to support. You know, I was used to call it my critical best friend, and the reason I was my critical best friend is the best friend meant that they were always doing it from a position of love.
Yeah.
And the critical piece being they'd let me know that the outfit didn't look great before I headed out for the night, not actually at the end of the night. Yeah, you should have seen what you look like. So I think it's so important that you have that, we have that support, and we get out of our own heads. Because I think sometimes what we say to ourselves internally sounds so practical, but the minute you say it out loud to another human being, you sometimes see for yourself that it's just not helping you in any way, don't you?
Absolutely, completely. I mean, getting out of your own way was a key aspect in anything that you would do with a young performer in any environment, let alone it be football. It could be anything, including business as well, by the way, because part of the skill of leadership, excuse me, I hope I'm not stealing questions from you here, but part of the skill of leadership is getting out of people's way and letting them do a job to the point they can only do that, by the way, if they know you're an authentic person. In other words, you want the devil who wears Prada who jumps out the corridor when things go wrong and do it in a different way, because you're looking to create a blame culture.
Yeah.
So trust and respect and all of that goes with that, all the defining words, of which we could sit here till infinitum and keep coming up with words. Once again, none of those mean absolutely anything whatsoever unless you believe in them and that they come from an authentic voice.
That's so true. Believing in them, walking them as well. It's like making sure that they are part of your DNA, because people see when the lips and hips don't match, when what you say and what you do aren't aligning, then people won't follow you. They won't trust you. And I think for me, that's always been one of those really important things, is to create that trusted, safe space where people aren't afraid to fail, as we say, they set out with it as their goal, but where they know that if they do, as you know, that's not going to be the end of them. There's
Absolutely.
for them to learn. So how best do you go around creating that trusted environment for people?
You know, people use the word culture now. It's become a buzzword, hasn't it, in today's modern world? I don't know whether people used it less years ago. I haven't got a clue, to be quite honest with you. What I do know is it's really relevant. I genuinely believe that. So, you know, creation of culture isn't about putting beautiful pictures on walls, you know, with all these fantastic quotes when you walk down corridors and this, that, and the other. The problem with that, it's a little bit like decorating your room again for the first time in 3 or 4 years. When you redecorate your room again, you can smell new paint. But after a while, you become totally habituated to it and you completely ignore it. Yeah. That's the same with, you know, all these posh things that you go down corridors and you look at them and this man said this and this lady said that, and none of it means anything unless you follow what it says, plain and simple. It has, this trusting environment has to come from somebody who truly is authentic. I've used that word X number of times already. You know, it's your podcast here, Authentic Achievements. It couldn't be, nothing could be truer in a title, really. Authentic Achievement says it all. You can only achieve if you are authentic. You might achieve once, by the way. You might achieve twice, but you'll never achieve time and again.
Yeah.
Because achieving time and again comes from a true winning mindset. It comes from somebody who knows how to win. Knowing how to win, and I'm using football phrases if you like, but I actually believe that these are phrases that transfer right over to other areas. Is that true winning mindsets is delved out by people who have beliefs in how an environment should work. Now, there's no point in me saying what those beliefs are because you've got your beliefs, I have mine, whatever that might be. But they then have to live. And it's not just about talking the talk, you've got to walk the walk. So people have to be able to walk the walk with you. They have to be part of that journey. And a real critical thing, and I really believe this, Kim, and this is the adage of the great All Blacks, 1 captain, 15 leaders.
Yeah.
Not just one leader. Everybody has to become a leader. At first, they might be followers. Now, there will be people who listen to this who might go, hold on a minute, not everybody wants to be a leader. I agree. But everybody has a perspective where they can step up to leadership, only if for minutes at a time. So in other words, they take now what I think is the first part of a winner's mindset. They accept responsibilities.
Yeah.
Because you have to. That's what winners do. That's how you generate great results. But it originally comes from somebody who's utterly responsible for the entire environment, who has a belief that this is how I want this place to operate. And he influences mindsets, or she influences mindsets. They go out there and they do it, and they don't sit in offices thinking that fantastic images on walls and stuff like that are going to do it, and sending emails to each other, making a phone call, can you, will you, have you, all that type of stuff. It doesn't work. You have to influence mindsets before you can do anything. And keep doing that, because that never stops.
Well, no, it's constantly evolves, isn't it? You know, they say we win it in here before we win it here.
Absolutely.
And that's true also of our people, isn't it? And I think you're quite right. Not everybody wants to be a leader in title, in the role, but actually each and every one of us is the leader of our own life. So developing those leadership skills and being able to set our own direction allows us to regain some control.
Yes.
I think sometimes it's the title that puts people off, isn't it? It's they want the title, but actually they'd quite like to have more of the autonomy that comes from that accountability.
Yes, completely. You know, I mean, what is in a title? I mean, some people think that's really important. A good friend of mine in another football club had this really long title given to his job description. To this day, he always turns around and says, I'm still working out what it meant. You know, I mean, and yet everybody loved to use it when they spoke to him. And he was the only person that didn't like to use it. And so, once again, this whole, the whole thing is all about mindset. You either have a mindset to want to move things on or not. And let's be honest, the one thing that really frightens everybody is the word change. They see the word change as something that's going to create potentially a cataclysm for them. And yet, if change is explained appropriately, people see in the word change opportunity. But often it's not described appropriately. How many times during a working week do we have to make minor changes?
I couldn't even begin to count.
Absolutely. So when the thunderbolt strikes and it hits the deck, it's something that we can't control anyway. But what a thunderbolt creates is something where we have to actually create a change now, because it leaves small cataclysms all over the place. And so we have to react to them. That's one thing I learned very quickly from professional football, Kim, was that if you want a good result next time round, you've got to work damned hard for it, plain and simple. And that had to be drilled into players' mindsets.
And I think from how you've explained it, reframing. That if we frame it badly, it will have a bad impact. If we frame it positively, then things go better. And change is always uncomfortable, even for the people that are leading the change, because you're right, there is opportunity in it, but there's equally the unknown in it. And actually, it's the unknown that we emotionally respond to, while we're desperately trying to get ourselves to that point of, actually, this is an opportunity and we've got a chance to do something different. And I think acknowledging that it's uncomfortable can be a huge step forward for people to be able to accept that change and get ready for it, because all of a sudden they're not in the wrong to feel uncomfortable, because change is uncomfortable. But it is a constant, isn't it, in the world we live in today, that it almost is the only consistent thing, is change is going to happen.
Without question. I mean, and see, change equals fear in many ways. And fear is the number one performance obstacle and always will be. Fear is created in loads and loads of ways. People who lack confidence or self-belief, if you like, who have transient confidence and transient self-belief in very great speeding levels, if you like, they lose those periods of confidence very quickly, are people who always have to be reminded how good they are at doing something. But that's part of a leader's job. Their job is not, when they make mistakes, is to find a means of creating a blame culture, because all that does is increase the level of fear. And so if you want somebody to step up to the plate, and yet you make the plate so damned hot that they can't stand on it, they ain't going to do that. It's as simple as that, because they have a survival instinct that will keep them away from an area where they're going to be in a place where fear hurts them even more, because that's what fear does. It hurts to the degree where your people who are so damn good at what they do won't step up to the plate. So what we're talking about here is, excuse me, being deviant, is emotional intelligence. It's really, really important. It's mega important.
It is, and yet it's often passed off as a soft skill, isn't it? Which always makes me smile, because it's like, if it really was such a soft skill, why do people find it so hard to actually empathize with other people and kind of consider the human impact that whatever we're going through could be having on the person that you're leading?
You've just said something so profoundly true there. One of the best things I ever did, my job in professional football, was have a responsibility towards bringing somebody in to do work with coaches. Her name was Gwen Byram. I don't know if she'll ever listen to this. I hope that she does. But what the work that she did was all on the area of soft skills. It had nothing to do with coaching on a coaching ground or anything like that, because I started to understand, as I became more mature, if you like, in terms of thinking, not in terms of age, of course, but in terms of thinking about how to work with younger products and work with coaches was that the bit that was missing more than anything was the understanding of themselves.
Yeah.
How could they ask somebody to start understanding themselves more if they themselves didn't understand who they were? That just doesn't work. It's a step too far, and it's completely irrational. You know, how many times I have heard somebody say to a player, you need to show more confidence. You need to have more self-belief. And then one day a player turned around and said, how do I do that? And the answer couldn't be given.
Yeah.
Because it's just a generic comment that's been thrown out there. But the implications are, of course, that you're not very confident because you don't bawl and shout and jump around or goodness knows what. No, you've got to understand yourself. The soft skills, Kim, are just massively important.
That's so true. I love as well what you were just saying as well as the other bit that's really important is that element of introspection, that element of being able to look inward and get to know yourself and understand where are those areas where actually you will feel fear faster than perhaps other people within that particular situation, and where are those areas where actually you'll be the one that can lead people through it because you're confident in those spaces. And I think we spend a lot of time telling people how to fix things outwardly and go and get more advice, but actually really knowing who you are first is the key step, isn't it, to being able to achieve whatever you're destined to achieve authentically.
There was a point reasonably early in my career when I understood that what I had to stop doing was coaching footballers and start understanding people more. And it was quite a defining moment for me. And it happened, you know, when I'd actually been given a video of, in the early days of the use of video, by the way, it was really early days of the use of it. Nobody had any idea whatsoever how to use stats and stuff from games and clips and this, that, and the other. It was all new stuff. Why it should have been new stuff beats the hell out of me, because we'd been looking at playbacks on Match of the Day and goodness knows what for ages. So it's the same thing, if you like. But having been given a video, I've told friends this many times. I turned the video on, and the video showed the coach from the touchline, and the coach on the touchline was, it was almost like an echo of Radio 5 Live. Yeah. It was nothing but do this, do this, do this, do this, except all that type of stuff. There isn't a human being that can react positively in that environment. Just isn't. And that coach was me. And the frightening thing for me was that I never thought I was like that. Yeah. But I found out I was. And I sat down and took 5 minutes of chill time and real, using your phrase, introspection, and going inside myself and going, my God, am I expecting these players to develop in this environment? And I just went, right, this has to change. And so I sat down and created a plan for personal change. And I did it that day. It lasted all week. I carried on doing it all week. Brought in my friend who I spoke to on many occasions. That's all we did all week, was speak about this stuff. And somebody who had a great deal of experience. And I thought, what the heck, I'm going for it. And that's exactly what I did. So I became a mentor, for the want of a better way of saying it. I started to mentor players more, ask them questions more. How would you do it differently? Which is why I was so chuffed. That was one of the few words, the first words I used right at the beginning of this. How might you do it differently? When you think about it like that, the implication is that what you're not doing when you say that to somebody is that, why have you done it that way? You're not saying it like that. You're not creating fear and threat. You know, the worst word you can use when you're asking somebody about a result that's been achieved is why. Yeah. Why? Because it can be used in so many different ways. For example, Kim, why did you do that? Or Kim, why on earth have you done that? Because it's faced with body language. And body language is a killer if used inappropriately.
It's so, and it's one of the things I try really hard to avoid when I'm, when I'm asking any questions, is having why in them. I try and get myself to think about what else could I say. So could I make it a how question? Could I make it a what question? Could I make it a, something slightly different? Because inadvertently, sometimes we start with why, and actually that takes us back to a childhood where maybe that's how we got there. Why on earth would you do that? Which I'll be honest, I got quite a lot. And it shuts you down to the art of the possible, doesn't it? To the what would be different. And actually, how could you do that differently? When we've done things well, as much as we do it when we have done things that haven't gone so well, then actually we become less fearful of that continual learning, don't we?
Absolutely correct. I mean, it's a bit easy for me to speak like this, if you like, to some degree, because I was a teacher a million years ago. But once a teacher, always a teacher. You never forget how to teach.
Yeah.
And that word of education, or using the Latin of educare, which I think is correct, you don't lose that mindset towards it. And I genuinely believe then that everybody that I worked with, there was a golden nugget inside of them. But sometimes we don't spend time trying to find out what it is. Quite the contrary. I've made reference to you on several occasions about a person that I appointed in my department by the name of Luke. And I describe him to today, even to today, as the only Pied Piper I've ever met in my entire life. He was a Pied Piper. He taught me something. I used to stand and watch that his body language and speech with players was outstanding, truly outstanding. It was laced in empathy. And you can't be empathetic if you are not authentic. Because being authentic is the foundation of becoming empathetic.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that. These are my beliefs, by the way. There'll be people who listen to this that don't agree with me. I'm fine. I'm all right with that, because that creates good conversation anyway. But this man was a Pied Piper. Wherever he went, the little rats wanted to follow, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's in a pleasant term in saying that. He created endearment. He created a desire for them to want to hang by what things that he said. So if people ever ask me, is there one person that you've ever appointed in a job that you would go, yes, that's the one. He's the one. No question. No question. I've told him to his face many times. Many times. He had an ability. And I think if I was in a position now where, if you like, I had to try and appoint somebody in a really key position, I would absolutely look for a Pied Piper.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They're worth their weight in gold. It's the biggest gold nugget you'll ever find.
I love that. It's so true, isn't it? Because if you can build that empathy, if you can build that environment for people to flourish, people want to stay there.
Yes.
They want to stay somewhere where they feel empowered, and that they, I guess more importantly than anything else, that they know that you've got their back. Because that's one of the big fears, isn't it? That, like, we can go hero to zero, and that's always a worry. Whereas if you've got a leader who has created that safe space where actually you can't go hero to zero, all you can do is learn, all you can do is keep growing, keep developing, then actually we're willing to take appropriate risk. And that's when we start to innovate, and we start to be more curious about what is the art of the possible, what are the other opportunities for us to succeed.
Yeah, without question. The very first time I ever spoke to you, I learned something that I hadn't even thought about. Okay, I've never told you this, but I'm going to tell you now anyway. I learned something. I always used to use the word curiosity, because I've always believed that curiosity never killed a leader.
Yeah.
Most people would say being curious is being nosy. All right, if it is, I'll accept that. Curiosity implies to me a greater level of intelligence than being nosy. You used the word passionately curious. And that stuck with me, to be quite honest with you. It stuck with me greatly, because just with one word in front of another word, which I believe in, that word curious, being curious. You put something in front of, which means do it with a real passion, do it with your heart. Now you got a chance. Because the word influence is massive. How we choose to continually influence the people we work with will be the reason that we get the results that we get. And if we don't get the results that we get, don't go looking at your people first. Look inside yourself. Because you're the boss, and it is your incumbent responsibility to ensure that before they do their jobs, you do yours better.
Yeah.
And that's so important. That
it is. It's massive. I built my career on being curious. I'd love to understand how it is that we came up with this, and why we. I don't like why is it we've set it up this way? What are the reasons? What are the drivers? Because when you have those kind of conversations, you'll be amazed what you find, and it just unlocks so much, doesn't it? Pete, you've shared so much with us. If you could go back and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
I'm pausing because I want to ensure that I understand what I say correctly. I've used the word fear, and I think that I would absolutely try to understand myself better when I was going into football, when I went into teaching. Going into teaching was a tad different than going into football. Going into football was frightening. It was a new place. I was completely out of any security, completely. And you take in with you fear when that's the case. And fear is a killer. It stops you from performing. So the advice that I would give now, if I was stood in a room of young people wanting to progress into football or whatever that might be, or people in business, I would say responsibility makes you step up to the plate. But it absolutely creates fears. There's no question about that. And fear is something you have to come to terms with. So this is the advice I would give me. Understand what my triggers were for those fears a lot quicker than I did. Because understanding what takes you to the point of fear allows you to be able to deal with that. Now you can step up to courage, Kim. But you can't step up to courage unless you know what those worries are in the first place, because that's just a conundrum. So that would be my advice. That's what I would say to me if I was looking at me in the mirror. And the last bit I would equally say is, don't ever forget that sometimes when you look in a mirror, you might not like what's looking back at you. So don't be worried and frightened about changing it. You got to do that. Plain and simple.
I love that. It's so true, isn't it? Because that is, I think, often the thing that we're most fearful of, is that we'll look in the mirror and not like what we see. But we get to change that. If we don't like it, we get to develop and do something a bit different. And I think that knowing your fear, because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's knowing your fear and working through it.
Yes.
Feeling courage anyway.
A lack of courage can be a lack of understanding of the fear. Very quickly, I would say to you, every time I went into a changing room with players, particularly on game day, I absolutely made sure that I understood the walls of the changing room were a mirror.
Yeah.
They were a mirror where the players would see me from any angle where they were sitting. I had to make sure that the reflection in the mirror was the one I wanted them to see. Plain and simple. That I wanted them to work with. And that was really, really important, because when they left the changing room to go into the gladiatorial amphitheatre on the grass, they had to believe that the man on the touchline was with them, that his soul was with them, and that every time his heart beat, theirs beated as well. And that might sound a little bit corny. I really, really believe in that stuff. That's when you know your people will follow you. And after a while, they'll start to lead. One captain, 15 leaders. It's a great phrase.
It is a great phrase. I think it is that combination that you've talked about of being passionately curious, but consistently intentional. So
Yes.
you described being like, being really present in the moment and considering how you're going to reflect in that mirror of the changing room. And that takes consistent and conscious choice, doesn't it? It's about being intentional in what we're doing, as well as being curious about the art of the possible.
You've just described all the words that fit into that phrase, authentic. When people ask what is authentic leadership, you've just described it, Kim. Because that's exactly what it is. It's consistency. It's about knowing that actually when your behavior reflects a pattern, sometimes when things have gone wrong, that surprises people. That's a worry for some people, because the implications in that is that you're looking to pin a tail of blame on the nearest donkey. And that's not right. That's inappropriate. Your behaviors should always be consistent, because it's your behaviors that might ensure that the effort and commitment that your people are about to give you is not what it should be. Because when people are frightened, they step back in terms of commitment. They step away, they step back. Confidence lacks, self-belief disappears. And the two things are slightly different. They disappear. And I'm going to say this. I know that this will be absolutely disagreed with by some people. I believe in ego. I believe ego and confidence sleep in the same bed. I think that they work together. But when ego goes rogue and becomes egotism, then that's dangerous. And so I don't take the adage when people say, leave your ego outside the room. I say, no, please bring your ego inside the room, because I want to see it. I want to hear it. I want to experience it. I want to know what it can give other people, how it can influence and inject other people with realms of enthusiasm that they might not have. That's a little bit of something that maybe another organization doesn't have. And in your work environment, you've just found a maverick performer who does things slightly differently. He's got 5% more than other people have. That doesn't make him or she better. It makes them different. But what they have to now know is that they have a responsibility to infuse the other parts of the environment with what they have, so they can share it and it becomes a team effort. Because the whole thing is about team. It's not about an individual.
It's so true. It's like how we create that space where everybody has their part to play, and each part is equally important. They might not be as flashy as each other, but they're equally important. It is always the sum of the parts that is greater than the individual elements, isn't it? And when we create that, we have the great.
Without question, it's always the sum of the parts. I mean, so it would be really rather strange if somebody like me came onto a podcast who'd been in the environment that I've been in and didn't talk about team. Nobody is bigger or greater than anybody else, but there are always levels of potential inside that area that sometimes other people look at when the chips are down a little bit. Who can we look to light the spark? That's when your maverick performance has to step up. They light the spark. And then other people make the spark really burn brightly. And now you've got a team.
I love that. How can people get in touch with you so that they can benefit from your wisdom and your models to help organizations to really create that high performing culture?
Thank you for the word wisdom. I never even considered that in relation with the name Peter Lowe. But anyway, they can certainly find me on LinkedIn. Okay. I have a strong profile on that. Instagram is Peter Lowe 91, at Peter Lowe 91, or at Your First Team. They can get me on that one as well. And I'm happy to give my mobile number, which is 07531 538302, or email address, email me at pete@petelowe.com.
Perfect.
pete@petelowe.com.
Fab. And I will make sure those details are in the show notes below.
Thank you, Kim.
Time to write all of those down. Don't worry, they are in the notes down here. Pete, it has been an absolute pleasure as always. I really look forward to next time. And for everybody listening, I hope you found it insightful, and I highly recommend that you get in touch with Pete and continue the conversation. Until next time, take care.
Thank you.